Hello students, welcome back. In this class, we are going to discuss the last topic from this unit, and that is the method overriding. So in the previous classes, we have discussed the term, that is what is inheritance, then the different types of inheritance in object-oriented programming language, then which are the different types of inheritances which are supported in Java, and we also seen that which different inheritances which is not actually supported in Java, but still we can achieve those inheritances by means of interfaces. So in this class we are basically going to touch upon the last topic from this unit, that is the method overriding. And we already learn a similar term related to this method overriding, and that is nothing but the method overloading, right? So when you talked about, or when we discuss about the method overloading, so we in that we have discussed, or we have seen that is the same method name can be used for the multiple purpose, or the same method is performing the multiple tasks. In that case, that particular method is called as method overloading, right? And there is a usual question which is usually asked in the interviews, that what is the difference between the method overloading and the method overriding, right? Both of these terms are look same, but they are different in functionality, they are different in the way they are used. So when I'm talking about method overriding in Java, right? So method overriding means what? Again, we are talking about the method or the function. Whereas whenever I'm saying overriding, if suppose you are having a certain variable, and if suppose I'm saying that a is equals to 10, so the initially the value of a is 10. Whereas if suppose again I'm declaring a is equals to 20, so in that case what will happen? The earlier value which the a was holding, it will be overridden by the 20. So now the new value for the a will be 20. So that is what the overriding we are having. So when I'm talking about overriding with respect to the method, means what? We are having a same method, right? And same method is performing the different operation. Whereas when I'm saying that a same method is performing a different operation, so it is also related to the method overloading. But as we know that whenever we want to overload the particular method, we are having some rules, we are having some regulations, right? That in order to call a particular method to be overloaded, in that case your method name should be same, whereas the number of parameters or the type of parameter should be different, right? And whenever we are having such no definition, or we are having such a declaration, in that case we say that particular concept as a method overloading. But when you're talking about method overriding, again your method name is same, but along with the method name, the type and the number of parameters is also same. Means there should not be any difference when we are using the same method twice. If suppose I am having add method, and let's say I am passing an integer a, so in order to override that particular add method, again I need to call that add, that is add, and again I need to pass the same parameters. So when your method is identical, right, and it is get called number of times, in that case we can say that a particular method is get overridden, right? So there are certain rules and regulation whenever we are talking about method overriding in Java, that in case of method overloading, there was no any requirement that you can no use the method number of times, you can change the number of parameters, you can change the type of parameters, and in that way you can no overload the particular method. But when you are talking about method overriding, in case of method overriding, we at least required the two different classes, right? That is what we required, a parent class, we required the child class, and in both the classes we want that the method should be same, right? So when in the parent class and in the child class we are having the same method, in that case we can say that that particular method is get overridden. And when I'm saying that the method should be same, so method should be identical actually, right? So the way I have declared the method in the parent class, so the same method should be used in the subclass or the child class. So when we are having such scenario, in that case we say that the particular method is get overridden, right? So but obvious the question which arises, that what is the use of method overriding? Because what we are doing actually, we are just keeping the same method, we are keeping the same definition, and the only thing we are doing is that we are using the same method in the multiple classes, right? Whereas those classes are no interrelated or no having some relation between each other. So what is the use of this in the real time scenarios, right? If suppose I'm considering the example like, let's say, car, right? So if I'm talking about the car, so if I'm assuming the any type of car, so they are having a different speed, right? Depending upon the type of engine they are having, depending upon the cc engine they are having, so the speed is going to vary with respect to car. So when I'm saying that the Maruti Suzuki is derived from the car class, and let's say car class is having a speed as a function, right? So but obviously the Maruti Suzuki is having some speed, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the same method which is defined in the car class, whereas as the Maruti Suzuki is, let's say, having 100 kilometers per hour speed, so I'll be defining that the speed of Maruti Suzuki is 100 kilometers per hour, right? And let's say again I'm just no deriving one more class. Let's say I'm no deriving the Audi from the car. So again the Audi is having certain speed. So again I am deriving the same method, again I'm using the same method which was used in the parent class, right, inside the Audi class, and I will be declaring the speed of the particular Audi class, right? So these are what the scenarios where we can use the method overriding, because we know that all these cars, or whichever the car we talked about, they are going to have the speed for sure, right? Whereas no, we are using the same method in every subclass. So whenever we are using the same method which is declared in the parent class inside the subclass, so that particular stuff is nothing but called as method overriding, right? So if you can just go through the PPT, so declaring a method in the subclass which is already present in the parent class is known as a method overriding, right? Or in other words, if a child class has the same method which is declared in the parent class, it is known as the method overriding, right? So, and one more thing that we have to keep in mind when we are talking about a method overriding, that is without a inheritance, method overriding is not possible, right? So that is what key point which you have to keep in mind, that whenever we want to achieve the method overriding, we at least require the two classes, right? And those two classes should have the relationship between each other, right? And then only we can override the particular method, right? So what is the advantage? That a method overriding is used to provide a specific implementation of a method that is already provided by its superclass, like the way I have considered example of car, that inside the car class I have declared the method that is the speed, and in all the derived class I have implemented the specific method that I want, that with respect to the child class or with respect to derived class, the method name should not be different, the method name should not be vary. So I have defined one method and all the child class are implementing that particular method, right? And method overriding is used for runtime polymorphism. Why it is called as runtime polymorphism? Because we are defining the several definition, or we are giving the several definition for the single method. So which method to be get called, that is decided at the runtime. Whereas when you're talking about a function overloading, it was a compile time polymorphism, because which method to be used, it was decided at the compile time. And again, whenever we are talking about the rules for method overriding, it is almost same. The only thing is that it is differ with respect to the we at least should have the two classes, then the declaration and the declaration of the particular method should be same in both parent class as well as the derived class. So method must have the same name as the parent class. It is almost the same rule which we are using in the method overloading. Then second is what, method must have the same parameter as in the parent class, that is identical definition or identical declaration of the particular method. And but obvious, it requires the two classes, so it should have the easier relationship between those two classes. That is what the extend keyword we are going to use. So if I'm talking about this particular example, so what I'm having is I'm having a class vehicle, right? Whereas I have declared one method that is a void run, and here I have just declared the definition, or I define this method that is system.out.println vehicle is running, right? Whereas whereas I'm just extending a new class that is a bike from the vehicle, and inside that I'm creating the object for this vehicle bike class, and using this bike object I'm just no calling the function of the vehicle class. So as it is having a relationship between the vehicle and the bike class, so I can know by creating the object of the child class, I can access the method of the parent class. Whereas if I want to use, or if I want to know, just implement the method overriding, then what I need to do, I need to have one base class, where the base class will be having one method. Then from the base class I'm going to derive the new class, right? And inside the new class I'm going to declare the same method as it is, whereas the definition can be different, right? That this run method is having a different definition inside the vehicle class, whereas this run method is having a different definition inside the bike class, right? Whereas if I want to access the definition of the respective class, now if suppose I call this run method, so the compiler will be get confused, right? So the which run method to be get executed, that will be depending upon that which, for which class I'm creating the object. If suppose I'm creating the object for the bike class, so if I call the run method, so the run method which is defined inside the bike class will be get called. If I create the object for the vehicle class and if I call the run method, so the definition of the run method which is defined inside the vehicle class will be get called, right? So this is what a method name are same, as well as they are identical, and they are no, they are one run method is declared in the parent class and is been used as it is in the child class. So when I created the object, right? So but obviously it is going to execute the run method which is the declare inside the vehicle bike class, right? That is what a bike object, new bike, and I'm calling bike dot object dot run. So this object is nothing but created for the bike, so we'll be getting the output as bike is running safely. So one real-time example that where we can use the method overriding, as we all know about the scenario, that is the bank related scenario, in which what we are having is that we are having a different banks, and those different banks are providing the different rate of interest, right? So a common method is there in all the banks, that the rate of interest, whereas the rate of interest is varying from bank to bank. Whereas what I assumed is in case of, just let's say I'm considering the three banks, that is SBI, ICICI and Axis, and they are no giving the rate of interest that is 8%, 7%, 9% respectively. So now in order to implement this scenario, I'm supposed to use the method overriding. So I'm going to use the method overriding, that I'll be having a base class that is a bank. Inside that I have defining one method, declaring one method, that is the get interest method, right? And this rate of interest are going to vary from bank to bank, right? Whereas from this bank class I had derived the SBI bank, right? Whereas SBI bank is again writing the same method, whereas the definition is changed because SBI bank is giving the rate of interest of 8%, right? Then again from this bank class I have derived the ICICI bank, right? Whereas ICICI is again having the same method, that is overridden, and again it is returning the rate of interest as 7. Similarly, I have derived the Axis Bank from the bank class, and again I have written that it is going to return the rate of interest, that is 9, right? So now if I want to execute this particular program, or if I just want to print the rate of interest for the Axis, ICICI and SBI bank, so I need to create the object for each class. That is, each class will be having a separate object in order to execute the method which we have defined inside that particular method, that is a get interest. So what I did, inside the main method I have created the object for SBI, I have created the object for ICICI, I have created the object for Axis, right? And using the object of the respective classes I have called the same method, that is a get interest, I dot get interest, A dot get interest, and accordingly the get interest method of the respective classes get called and is get executed, right? So this is what the mostly you can say the real-time example where we can relate that how exactly we can use the method overriding, right? So this is what one more example which I try to quote, that we are having one method that is a calculate method, and using this calculate method I'm performing the different operations, like inside the base class I'm performing the addition on these two parameters. Then again from the base class I'm deriving the new class, where on these two numbers I'm performing the multiplication. Likewise I can now derive the one more class where I can perform the division operation, and when I want to execute the method of the respective class, I need to create the object for that particular class. So in this case, I have created the object for the derived class, right? So, but obviously if I created the object for the derived class, so it is going to execute the things for the derived class. So if I say that what will be the output, so but obviously as I've created the object for the derived class, so which calculate method will we get called? That is, but obviously that is the derived class calculate, and here it will be the multiplication operation. So the output which I am getting, that is a 100, because it is going to perform the multiplication as defined inside this calculate method inside the derived class, right? So this is also called as dynamic method dispatch, as it is runtime polymorphism, because your compiler decides that which method to be executed at the runtime. So again, this is one more example as almost the same example, no? And yes, what is the method overriding in Java? Can we override the static method? So these are what the certain questions which can be asked with respect to the method overriding. So the first question which can be asked, that can we override the static method, right? That is the way. No, we know what is static method, and no, we have written the public static void main. So whenever we are having any method as a static, we cannot override the static method. And why is it so? Because static method can have the only one instance, right? And when you are overriding the particular method, we are trying to create the multiple instance of that particular method. So that is the reason why we cannot override the static method. Then because the static method is bound with the class, whereas instance method is bound with the object. Static belongs to the class area and instance belongs to the heap area, right? That is the reason. Can we override the Java main method? No, because Java main method is a static method, so but obviously it cannot be overridden, right? Then rules for that we have seen almost same as the method overloading. The only thing is that we should at least have the two classes, and there should be a relationship between the two classes, and when we want to use the method should be identical in both the classes. Then an instance method can be overridden only if they are inherited by the subclass. A method declared final cannot be overridden because final keyword is the one no, which indicates that this is the final instance of that particular method. So that way it cannot be overridden. Then again, static method cannot be overloaded, as we have seen. And again, these are the same thing which we have discussed. And this is what the method overriding, that how the method overriding will take place. If suppose we are having something in the parent class, then how it will be accessible inside the child class, and whether it is allowed or not allowed, right? So if you are having anything as a default, and if you try to access as in private, so it is not allowed. If you are having a public, if you want to access as a default, it is not allowed, right? And this is one more example. So can we override the Java main method? As we already overriding and constructors cannot be overridden, because constructors are not methods, and a subclass constructors cannot have the same name as the superclass. That is but obvious, because whenever we are talking about a constructor, the constructor name is same as the class name, and when we are writing the two different classes, so but obviously the two different classes will be having the two different constructors. So that way it is we cannot say it is overridden, right? Because in order to override the constructor, your constructor name should be same in both the parent class as well as the child class, where that is not possible, because constructor name itself indicates the constructor name should be same as the class name, right? Then a method declares static, that is what we have seen already. And again, as I said, that it is very important question which is usually asked, that what is the difference between the method overloading and method overriding, right? So method overloading is used to increase the readability of the program, as we do not need to remember the multiple functions name. We can use the same function name and it is performing the multiple operation. Whereas when you're talking about method overriding, it is used to provide the specific implementation of the method that is already provided by its superclass. So with respect to what I want to do with the particular method, I can do it, right? Then method overloading is performed within a class, whereas if I want to perform the overriding, I at least require the two classes, that is a relationship. In case of method overloading, parameter must be different, either the number of parameters or the type of parameters. Whereas when I'm talking about overriding, the parameters and the function name must be same, right? The method signature must be different in case of overloading, whereas method signature must be same, that is identical in both parent class as well as the child class. whereas private, static and final methods can be overloaded. Whereas if you are having a private, static and final methods, so it cannot be overridden, right? Then access modifiers point of view is no restriction in case of overloading, whereas as we have seen the table, there is a restriction in case of overriding, right? Whereas method overloading is an example of compile time polymorphism, whereas method overriding is an example of runtime polymorphism, right? So these are what the few of the differences. Now you can list down the number of differences between the method overloading and method overriding. And one more important, that this diagram indicates everything, that what is the difference between the method overloading and the overriding. So when we are no the same method is performing the multiple tasks, it is a method overriding. When a method is performing the different tasks at the different levels, right, and it is not vary from implementation to implementation, that is the overriding, right? And then this is an example of method overloading. We already seen the example, and also I implemented the method overloading, right? So this is what example for method overloading. This is an example for method overriding, where we are having a common method, that is it, right? So that's it for from this particular unit. See you in the next class with the last unit, that is related to the stream classes and data structures in object oriented programming language. So thank you for your patience listening. See you in the next class.